Good morning. I am going to turn the meeting over to President Harrington, who is joining us virtually this morning.
Good morning. This is Commissioner Harrington. I now call to order the special board meeting of the Park Ridge Park District Board of Commissioners. Today is Saturday, March 21st, 2020, and it is currently 9:10 a.m. Mary Ann, may you please take the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Coyne? Commissioner
Here.
Commissioner Coyne?
Diane DeGangi.
Okay, Commissioner Coyne?
Commissioner Coyne is here.
Thank you.
Here.
Commissioner Grau?
Here.
Commissioner Leduc? Commissioner Leach?
Here.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Leach? Commissioner O'Donnell? Commissioner Tunnell?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington?
Here. With a quorum present, we now proceed to any public comment on non-agenda items. And since this is being Facebook live streamed, I'll ask Margaret Holler if there are any public comments.
No, there's not.
Great. Any comments in the room at Wohlers Hall?
No, there's no public presence.
Okay, hearing none, we now move to approval of compensation for part-time seasonal employees to be paid as a benefit during the period of March 14th to March 27, 2020, due to the emergency shutdown of the Park District services in response to COVID-19. I'm going to go ahead and make this motion as detailed on the agenda, and after a potential second, then we can have some staff comments and board member discussion. I move to approve compensation for part-time seasonal employees during the period of March 14th, 2020 through March 27th, 2020 to be paid out, not to exceed $150,000. This action will be formally ratified at an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. May I have a second?
Second. That's Cindy.
Commissioner Grau has seconded. I'm going to turn it over to Director Mountcastle at this time.
Thank you. Before I get into the guts of the motion and the proposal, I just want to thank formally the staff that has been working tirelessly on keeping the district running virtually. It's been a whole new experience, and to all of our staff and our board members and the community for, staying safe and helping us through this as a park district and making sure that we're all following the guidelines that have been set from the CDC, from the IDPH, and from the governor's office. So thank you. I have put before you a proposal that includes a compensation for part-time seasonal employees for a 2-week time frame, as the motion had described, for our part-time employees who are integral to our operations, and we're trying to provide them a bit of relief during this time frame in this emergency closure. The staff was prevented from working starting March 13th when we closed the district, and our recommendation includes paying the active people on the payroll, and the majority of them will be paid by the schedule for those 2 weeks. Some of it will be a bit of a hybrid due to the fact that spring break fell during these 2 weeks, and we have substitutes in for several of the positions. We also have some positions, example is it the trainers that may not have had a regular schedule during those 2 weeks, so we'll be doing a look back and then looking at the schedule to figure out these hours. As you can see, we've put together, Superintendent DeAngelis put together an average payroll for part-time staff for the past 4 payrolls, and 4 of them were full payrolls, and then the 5th one excluded the Friday, March 13th when we were closed. And then there's also a small dollar amount of $17.50 for what we're estimating for Paycom fees. I feel like the 150 gives the opportunity to make sure that, we can only estimate so well in terms of looking back, and we didn't know exactly what the schedule was for the 2 weeks of the March 14th through the 27th. So we feel the 150 will give us the ability to take care of the people that were on the schedule and then doing a look back for certain employees. So that is our proposal at the time.
I am going to request now that we hear from Superintendent DeAngelis because I am going to make the assumption that as I have the question, would like to hear a little bit about the modeling and projections done to determine the financial position of the district as it currently stands with this proposal on the table, and then kind of talking through scenario planning through the next several months as the district responds to COVID-19 and revenues are impacted and services are closed, potentially.
Excuse me 1 second. Somebody just chimed in to the call. Who can you tell me who you are?
It's Dirk.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So, can we turn it over to Superintendent DeAngelis now
Yes.
for some further information?
Yes.
Hi.
Thank you.
So, our financial position currently remains strong. We've gotten in the first half installment of the bulk of the first half installment of property taxes. So our cash position is fine. We are working through projections and scenarios into the future. It's, we're trying to think through what could occur, but our current position is I'm not concerned about the proposal as it impacts our current position.
I'm going to open it up now to other commissioners because I'm assuming that there are questions that I can't see. So at this time, are any other commissioners have questions for Superintendent DeAngelis or Executive Director Mountcastle?
Hold on 1 second.
This is Commissioner Grau.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hey, Commissioner Grau, hold on 1 second. There's another chime that came through. Did somebody else come through? Another commissioner?
Yes, Commissioner Leach. Sorry I'm late.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Grau, you have the floor.
No, I was going to ask who chimed in. I'm grateful that we are able to provide for our part-time staff at this time, and I'm fully supportive of this motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Grau. Other commissioners have questions as the motion is outlined. Hearing none, I do have a question as far as the motion at hand is for a 2-week period. Is it the belief of, is it the desire of the executive director to just have this 2-week period paid for? And then will the board be expected and engaged again to determine steps forward
Jim O'Donnell.
after the 2-week period?
Yes. The question was, is this for this current 2-week period, and do we expect to reconvene about future decisions for staff payment? And the answer is yes. We are looking to continue with our meeting on April 2nd as a virtual meeting and take this week to analyze further the financials. We've been looking at, the scenario of taking in 0 revenue in April and May. And this was put together yesterday as we, got the update on the laws and the closings. And so we have need to have the time to analyze this a little further. We're comfortable with this payment, and we plan to meet on April 2nd, which will give us time to discuss the next payroll period and how we will move forward with that.
There may also be additional legislation that
Right.
could affect things between now and then. So we will keep it.
We'll keep
This
you.
will keep evolving.
Yes, this will keep evolving. The Families First legislation just came out Thursday afternoon. So we have been looking at that with our attorneys, with all different people, experts chiming in, on employment consultants. So there is obligations by the law that have been set out that we will be required to pay in certain instances for part-time, seasonal, and full-time employees for a 12-week period. And Human Resource Director DeGangi is also on the line if there's further questions about that. But we plan to, the next week, be analyzing and getting out to the board more details, and it will be in the next packet for more of an analysis of going forward. And again, we feel very comfortable that this payment will be able to be handled in our budget, and including what the scenarios that we know right now.
Thanks. I think that additional look forward and kind of next steps is really helpful to me when we're evaluating this motion at hand, understanding that we're in very strong financial position and knowing that we will be evolving and that this is a decision for this 2-week period. However, the board will be asked to reconvene to consider next steps, and clearly unprecedented times where federal and state mandates and legislation are coming rapidly as a response to this.
Right.
So I appreciate that added detail for the board.
Sure.
Any other commissioners have questions? I know some have joined us and perhaps may have missed Superintendent DeAngelis's discussion around the financial position of the board right now to be able to make this 2-week pay period for part-time workers.
Commissioner Harrington, Commissioner Leach.
Commissioner Leach, you have the floor.
Thank you. Only thing I might ask, I think I understand the financial condition of the park board at this point and would support the question at hand. The piece of advice I might suggest to Superintendent DeAngelis and Ms. Mountcastle is when you come back at the April meeting, and again, apologize for being late today, but if you could talk to almost like a 13-week cash flow scenario, like how things are going to react. It's not the balance sheet that I'm worried about now. It's the lack of revenue. But again, I know a lot of things are in motion. But when you think of the traditional way of just understanding what bills are coming up and with a big hit to revenue here, that 13-week cash flow is a traditional form that I'm used to understand, what the impacts are going to be, that some are variable, but some are fixed and are going to be unavoided. That'd just be my recommendation.
Sure. I think it's a good recommendation. That's what we've started to do, and that will be the focus next week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other commissioners have any questions or comments with regards to the motion at hand?
Yes, this is Commissioner O'Donnell.
Commissioner O'Donnell, you have the floor.
Thank you. If you're not already doing it, I agree with Commissioner Leach's comments about 13-week cash flow, but I also believe it's naive to think that your assumption here is that things go back to normal, full budgeted revenue beginning in June.
Right.
Agreed.
I foresee the economic impact of what's going on to be even more severe than the financial crisis of 2008-2009. And I think you need to project some scenarios that reflect that going forward.
Right.
Once we reopen.
Thanks, Commissioner O'Donnell. This is Sandra. I agree.
Yes, we agree. We just had not gotten to that step yet due to all of the issues that we were dealing with this week to keep the district running. But that is our focus next week, and we are on board and agree with your comments.
So I missed I really had trouble signing in, and I sign into these things all the time, and I've never encountered that. But anyway, So I missed the presentation about exactly what's mandated by the Families First Act, and I would like to hear, could you just briefly summarize that and why it is we think that we're required under that act to make
Sure.
this payment, because I'm concerned about it.
We did not discuss that in detail, and we have Human Resource Director DeGangi on the phone, and I think she has got the best handle on that. So I'd like her to speak to that, if that's okay.
Sure.
Hi, it's Diane. So the act that is now law goes into effect April 2nd. And in summary, the first 2 weeks of the emergency paid sick leave, it's the first 2 weeks where an employee cannot work or telework remotely. So if they're totally unable to work or work from home or a remote location, the first 2 weeks would be paid at 100% of wages for 3 scenarios. And all 3 scenarios involve the employee being quarantined, caring for, it's just for them, their own illness, so that they've been quarantined, they've been advised to self-quarantine, or they're experiencing symptoms. So 100% of wages, if ill, let's just say, or quarantined. They also allows payment of wages for employees who are caring for a child.
Terry Wolf.
Due to the schools being out, and if an employee cannot work remotely, and they're caring for an individual who is whose school is out, or if they're caring for somebody who's subject to a quarantine, then we are required to pay wages at 2/3 of their wage. So that's for the first 2 weeks. After the first 2 weeks expire, then what would kick in is the FMLA expansion, and that would the length of time would be for the next 10 weeks. The employees who would be eligible for wages for the next 10 weeks would basically be employees that cannot telecommute, and they're caring for a child whose school is out of session. And that would be at 2/3 of their wage. There's a bunch of caps on there, or maximums, of course. I'm not going to get into all that detail. But the biggest, the largest amount of dollars would be really the first 2 weeks at 100% wages, and again, that is for quarantine or illness, and then 2/3 of wages if caring for a child. There's a lot more detail, but that is kind of the summary. I've been in contact with legal counsel, determined that we are, of course, subject to the law. And we are, and they've given me all the insight that they can. And that's just kind of the summary. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to address those.
Yeah, I just want to, but I'm going to chime in here, Diane. It's Dirk. I just want to make sure we're clear. The law doesn't kick in until April 2nd. Diane did a great job of explaining the obligations on us as a government employer. And how that works. There are some qualification hurdles. It's not everybody, but anybody who's been on the payroll for 30 days are going to be eligible for these things. And so, but there is a gap period. Right now, the law is not in effect. It's not in effect April 2nd. So in terms of, and not everybody's going to be able to use all of those benefits, because if I'm scared and don't want to come to work, I don't qualify for a COVID leave day. Essentially what they did is add COVID leave days in certain circumstances. And the fact that I'm afraid to come to work, that doesn't qualify. That I'm actually quarantined or I'm actually sick and going to go to the doctor to find out if I have it, that qualifies. So we're still till April 2nd, people are using their own leave days, or they're doing, or they're not getting paid, but that's how it works between now and April 2nd in terms of what the law requires.
I have a question, but I don't want to I know that Commissioner O'Donnell has the floor right now.
Well, I just, based on the two things that were, thank you, President Harrington. But then what is the law requiring where they just can't work because the employer's business is closed? Where does that fit?
You're essentially furloughing people. And so the question
Yes.
becomes, what are you intending to do during the furlough? Is it a paid furlough, or is it because if you furlough them in that sense, they are entitled to apply for unemployment. And while the law has been written to increase unemployment benefits and to make that easier, as a practical and pragmatic matter, so that you understand what this means for your workforce, the website's crashed every day at least 2 or 3 times for people trying to file for unemployment. And most people are being denied because the people on the front line at the Department of Labor don't understand the new law and haven't been trained on it. So that's all the safety net that's supposed to be in place. Right now, not all the hooks on the net have been installed, I would say. But that's the idea, is that if you're just closed, for whatever reason, like the restaurants and bars and other things, if we're in that situation, closed for that reason, you're on furlough. And the question becomes, you can file for unemployment, or as you see with some, higher profile social media things like the United Center, Soldier Field, Wrigley and G-Rate, they're all stepping up to voluntarily pay the workers what they would be getting paid. But that's voluntary, that's not legal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we would be falling into that category. We've essentially furloughed these employees. Is that correct? So that we're not mandated to do this?
Well, I don't believe we've done it yet. I don't know what you've told your employees specifically, but having closed, I want to make it clear. Pritzker's order does not shut you down. That's a decision you've made about your own operation. All of your government functions, other than your inside gathering spaces, but in terms of park maintenance to prepare for the inevitable season in which we'll have one, all those things can go on to maintain your assets, to make sure they're not wasted, and do all that kind of stuff. Yes, the inside spaces are not open. We're not allowed to gather in places of amusement and that kind of thing. And so what do you do with those workers who have no duties once they've done cleaning and preparing and maintaining, and they don't have any work left to do? You're entitled to furlough and they can seek unemployment. Or in a tight labor market like we had, where you've got trained people who know what they're doing and you're trying to keep them, you can make other accommodations. But the law doesn't require you to voluntarily pay them when there's no work for them to do because the facility is closed, other than unemployment.
So then that is what we're talking about here, is it not?
We're talking.
I don't understand the question. We're not talking about unemployment. We're talking about what you're going to do to keep your workers, as I understand it. We're not talking about unemployment. That'll be determined by the Department of Labor through the usual process.
No, I'm just trying to ascertain, are we doing something here that we're mandated to do by law?
No.
Or are we doing something, we're making a voluntary decision to retain our workforce or something like that?
We're making
the proposal on the book now is voluntary.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Commissioner Harrington here. I have some follow-up questions. Appreciate that insight into Families First. Wanted to clarify that indeed does apply to, it sounds like you have confirmed, units of local government, as well as full-time and all part-time employees?
That is correct.
Well, if they were on your payroll for the last 30 days. So If you were just about to hire some part-time people, or you just hired them, maybe getting some people in place for the upcoming season, and they'd only been on the payroll a week or two when all this happened, that they don't qualify. But yes, part-time people get, their average part-time work, and in some cases, that's people who work 5 hours a week. So, but it's that kind of thing. But there is an initial hurdle to clear about how long they were on your payroll.
Thanks, that's helpful. So just to clarify, Families First takes effect on April 2nd, but in what we're discussing with the motion at hand in deliberating payments to our part-time employees for this 2-week period is separate and above from that. It would be a voluntary decision on the part of this board to support our part-time employees during these unprecedented times.
Correct.
Does anyone have any other questions? Thanks. Does anyone have any other questions regarding the motion at hand?
I do. Can I just ask someone to mute who's ever typing? Thank you.
Matt Coyne has a question.
Commissioner Coyne, you now have the floor. Thanks, Commissioner Grau, for that recommendation.
So, do we have any part-time seasonal employees that we've hired since about March 1st that would now have been on the payroll for the 30 days? Or I guess it would be February, the end of February, that would be on the payroll for 30 days because of this extension.
This is Director DeGangi. I have not run those numbers yet to see if we have any employees that will fall into that bucket. We have not done any seasonal hiring yet.
Okay,
we're in good shape.
You just answered the question, I think,
great.
Because I wouldn't really care too much if it was 1 or 2 people, but if you had gone through and put a bunch of people on the payroll at the end of February, and this keeps them on the payroll until they would be eligible for the whatever it's called, this legislation.
Sure.
That might be something we wish to discuss. But if we're talking about the possibility that at most there'd be 1 or 2 people that would fall into that bucket, I'm really not too worried about that.
Yeah, we haven't done any of the ramping up yet to put anyone on the payroll for the season. And plus, if there are 1 or 2 or a handful even, the wages we would pay would be wages, an average, and it would be a look back over the prior 6 months. So we would be okay even with that because we'd be looking back to see what they earned over 6 months. But there are very few, if any.
In the 6-month look back, this is Gail, that Diane is referring to is for the Families First. We're not looking back 6 months for this payment that is the motion is concerning.
No, I understood that.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right. I yield the floor.
Thanks, Commissioner Coyne. Other commissioners have questions on the motion at hand. I wanted to allow for time as folks were on mute. But hearing none, I would recommend that we move forward with a roll call vote.
This is Margaret. I just have one public comment from Facebook Live. It's from Miss
Thanks,
Sanford.
Margaret.
And she wrote, "My heart goes out to all of you. These are such difficult decisions during tough times." That's my only public comment.
Appreciate her comment and support, and we're all in this together. Any other commissioners before we move, any other public comment before we move to the roll call vote?
There are none.
Thanks, Margaret. All right, Marianne, may you please call the roll?
Commissioner Coyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Aye.
Commissioner LaDuke?
Aye.
Is Commissioner LaDuke on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Leach,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
No.
Commissioner Tunnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
Can I ask when Commissioner Leduc came on the line?
I've been on here the whole time.
Okay, I did not know that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's our first experience.
All right, the motion has. Oh,
Sorry,
the
well, I
motion
came
has
on
passed.
right when.
Go ahead, Commissioner Leduc.
Oh, I was just saying I came on right when Harmony was starting things up, so I didn't want to interrupt that, and then just never. Sorry, forgot to identify myself.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Glad you had joined. We'll all get a little bit better at this, I
Yes.
imagine, as we all evolve in the way we typically do things. So glad you're with us. All right, so the motion has passed. I'd like to move on to the next motion at hand, the approval of Centennial Aquatic Center plumbing modifications bid. I move to approve C.W. Burns Co., Inc. as the lowest responsible bidder for the Centennial Aquatic Center plumbing modifications bid, and to accept the total base bid in the amount of $33,835, and to authorize the executive director to execute and deliver the agreement. This action will be formally ratified in an actual board meeting with physical presence at a later date. May I have a second?
Second, Commissioner
Second.
Leduc.
With that second, I would now yield the floor to Superintendent Wolf to provide some background on this motion.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is part of the continuation of the project to update and renovate the locker rooms at the Centennial Pool. We want to make sure that we keep this project on track so that we're prepared and ready for the outdoor pool season. And this bid came in within our budget, and we're just asking to keep moving with this project.
Thanks, Thanks, Superintendent Wolf. Any commissioners have questions for Superintendent Wolf at this time?
This is Commissioner Grau. Do you foresee they'll be able to do the work during this time?
I do. We wouldn't begin this work probably for a couple of weeks anyway because we'll have to get some of the paperwork in order. But we do anticipate that we would be able to continue with this work. Certainly if we're under any mandates or orders for social distancing and number of people gathering in a space, we will continue to comply with that and require that all contractors comply with that as well.
Thank you.
With Dirk joining us on the line, this is Commissioner Harrington, I would appreciate some insight into the governor's executive order issued yesterday regarding the shelter in place and the definition of essential services as it applies to public works projects. I think it would be appropriate under this motion.
So the order actually encourages public works construction to go on, and it uses the word encourages. If you have the order, it's widely available now, but if you want to do it, it says in paragraph 2, in the second paragraph of section 2, I guess, it says all essential businesses and operations, those are capitalized terms, are encouraged to remain open. And if you go to paragraph or section 12, among the essential businesses are two things that apply to us: essential government functions and essential infrastructure. Those are defined terms. Back in section number 9, essential infrastructure includes all public works construction that's ongoing. So they want us to continue to prepare for all government public works projects. It includes us. It's all agencies. all subdivisions, all units of local government are included in both the essential government function and the essential infrastructure. So the governor's encouraging that work to continue because we're going to need public works sooner than later, and so that's all been clearly accepted from the stay-at-home order. Yes, we're supposed to continue with the social distancing. 10 is what's recommended. 50 is the mandate in Illinois still. So, but we asked the contractors to stick with 10, and they're mostly able to do that. So, almost all the construction projects of your peers are ongoing and are continuing.
Thanks, Dirk. That's really helpful to have that insight. Other commissioners have questions at this time regarding the motion at hand. Allowing for appropriate time for folks to release the mute button. Hearing none, I would recommend we move to public comment on the motion. Margaret, any public comment?
There are none.
Hearing none, Mary Ann, may you call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner LeDuc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes. The motion has passed. I'd like to make a point of personal privilege here to thank Executive Director Mountcastle, our superintendents, and their teams for all of the work over the past week plus during unprecedented times, and for making quick and important decisions on behalf of the district to best serve the community.
Thank you.
I now move to adjourn the meeting of the Board of Park Commissioners. May I have a second?
Second.
Is that Commissioner Grau?
Cindy Grau. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Commissioner Grau. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The meeting is adjourned.